It's time for the Larry H. Miller Utah Summer Games at Southern Utah University in Cedar City. Register today to participate in the 40th anniversary season of a Utah sports tradition at utahsummergames.org. Participate in over 50 sports around the state. Then plan to join the opening ceremonies Friday, June 5th, presented by State Bank of Southern Utah. Register today to participate in the 40th anniversary season of the Larry H. Miller Utah Summer Games.
I sold my car in Carvana last night.
Well, that's cool.
No, you don't understand. It went perfectly. Real offer, down to the penny. They're picking it up tomorrow. Nothing went wrong.
So, what's the problem?
That is the problem. Nothing in my life goes as smoothly. I'm waiting for the catch.
Maybe there's no catch.
That's exactly what a catch would want me to think.
Wow, you need to relax.
I need to knock on wood. Do we have wood? Is this table wood?
I think it's laminate.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's close enough.
Car selling without a catch. Sell your car today on Carvana. Pickup fees may apply.
Ladies and gentlemen,
the biggest name.
You're locked on to Scotty G and the coach, Tim LaCombe, presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Hope you're all having a tremendous Monday. I know the Jazz are. Things are probably hopping in that new Jazz facility off 106th.
You can, you won't, you don't stop. You don't. Those guys probably didn't go to sleep. Or if they did, it was for a short period of time.
Well, this could be, we're talking about a potential generational draft, and the Jazz have the second pick in arguably the best draft since 2003. Now, we'll have to wait and see how these guys play out, but if the hype lives up to, the expectation lives up to the hype, then off we go, folks.
Where's the most expensive real estate in the United States?
Bay Area?
Bay Area.
Don't you think?
So this is like, you've just been gifted the NBA. If the NBA is a landscape, you just got a hill view in the most beautiful and most expensive section. So you've just got to make sure you build it right.
Yeah. You don't want your builder to be named Darko or Sam Bowie.
No Sam Bowie, no Markelle Fultz.
Yeah.
Don't go with Fultz and Sons. That has not worked out. Fultz and Fultz.
Oh, poor Darko.
I'll see your
right
Fultz and give you a Tatum.
Yeah. Let's avoid that one.
The beautiful one to me is all the time that Vlade Divac was in Sacramento as their GM and trying to really have a pulse on what's going on in Europe, and then they pass on Doncic.
Yeah,
that one made a ton of sense.
Yeah, that's.
But it's hard. The other thing
really is hard, and it's easy to go back in hindsight and be like, "You screwed up. When in reality, let's be honest here, every GM at the time would have taken Greg Oden over Kevin Durant.
100%. I mean, if you go back and look, because I did that the other night, I want to really kind of hone in on the type of guy that Danny drafts particularly high. I mean, you can go to Jaylen Brown, right? And Jaylen was not. People were not excited about Jaylen Brown at 3 in Boston. In fact, they booed that pick, and wanted him to go a different direction. He was a little bit raw offensively, but obviously they saw way more in him, and he's one of the best players in the league right now on one of the most relevant teams. So again, Tatum, I talked about that one. His shot was questioned. Not his shot. It was his work ethic was questioned, and how much he really loved to play and got after it. And I think those questions were answered. He's got a ring now. So this is where you dig into the dirt and you get into the weeds. You find out what they did in high school. If they were good citizens, if they repaid their debts to society. That was for an off-air conversation. I was telling these guys about some of my wilder days in my youth.
But you made it all right.
I made it all right, and I'm just excited because the Jazz, it's been so long, and this year it just seems like a firework went off here with, Keontae doing what he did, obviously the trade, and then I do not want to discount the last couple months. That was really important.
Yeah. All right, joining us now, you hear him every day from 2 to 6. He's also the Jazz Insider at KSLSports.com. He and Chandler Holt on the air yesterday breaking down the news. And, Ben, I got to imagine it was you and I had done a lot of lottery shows. I know what it's like to be disappointed when that card turns over. But when you saw the pivotal moment was Sacramento showing up at 7, and then I told my family, everybody be quiet, because that number 6 was going to be a big card. And when that flipped over and it wasn't Jazz, then you knew it was going to be a good day.
Yeah, you remember last year we were down at JCW's, and we kind of knew, oh, well, if the Washington Wizards show up at 6, the Jazz are in trouble. That means they've already fallen to 5, and that's exactly what happened. And you saw that same scenario starting to play out. You saw 2 teams before the Jazz have their names jumped into the top 4. And at that point, the Jazz had dropped from about a 45% chance of moving into the top 4 down to about a 45% chance of not making it at all. So it kind of the odds flipped on the Jazz, and it looked like things were not going to be ideal. And then, you see Brooklyn's name come up at 6, and then you're just wondering how high have they jumped.
We've talked today, Ben, about how you instantly in this process, discount the fact that these are all just unbelievably high-level guys, especially where the Jazz are drafting. And it comes down to, obviously, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but people tend to rush to what guys can't do in these situations. And I think it's important, like we had a disclaimer that, these are all really, really good players. What stands out to you in terms of DeBonsa, Peterson, Boozer, and Caleb Wilson? Do you feel like those guys kind of separated themselves from the rest of the pack? And if so, how would you rank those guys in your mind?
The 3 of the 4 of those guys separate themselves because they have good size, and everybody starting at about 5 and later is, kind of that guard type, and not elite size guards. Maybe Keaton Wagler's in that conversation, but he's not really in this talk for the Jazz anymore. And the 3 guys that have great size are A.J. DeBonsa, who's just a super-sized wing, Cam Boozer, who doesn't have, elite size for a forward, but he's probably going to be the strongest player in the NBA in his prime. I think there's a real conversation that he gets there. And then Caleb Wilson has, absurd size at 6'10", and with his leaping ability, he's going to be very physically dominant. And Darren Peterson does not have that. I'm very curious to see what his measurements are this combine. I think there's a real chance he comes in under 6'5" without shoes on, and then you really have to start make up, okay, where's the skill level? And that's where I think all of AJ, Darren, and Cam Boozer separate themselves even from Caleb Wilson. Their games are so polished. AJ's footwork is maybe the best I've ever seen from a wing. The first step, the second jump from Darren Peterson, just the fluidity of his athleticism is out of this world. And Cam Boozer's not quite that fluid, but the polish on his game is, as high level as you get from an 18-year-old. And that's important with Cam as well. He's 6 months younger than the rest of these guys. His just knowledge of how to make the right play in every setting from anywhere on the floor really, I think, separates him in some ways. So I think that's why those 3 guys, and then 4 if you bring in Caleb Wilson, have separated themselves from the rest of the group. It's the physical tools, and physical tools really, really matter in the NBA. So I think that's probably where they are. And in all honesty, like if I had to rank them, I think there's a tier that has AJ, Darren Peterson, and Cam Boozer at 1. And I do think there's maybe a second tier of Caleb Wilson unto his own, and then it's everybody else. But I think they are definitely a group by themselves. And I think there's going to be different players at the top of different draft boards. Like I won't be surprised if Memphis has Cam Boozer number 1 on their board and is just happy if he falls to 3.
So you mentioned yesterday when I hopped on with you as well, and you've talked about it on social media as well. A lot of people are just looking for the Jazz. It's either AJ or Darren, but you're saying don't discount Boozer in the mix on this. Why is that?
Well, I talked to people at the Jazz, and I didn't get any feeling that this was an easy pick. So I'm just going to tell you what I know, and I haven't had any specific names told to me at all. I'm not trying to say that the Jazz said any names specifically, but there's real concern about getting the right guy. Well, if they knew who the right guy was, they wouldn't be talking about that. They would say, well, it's either going to be AJ or it's going to be Darren, and we're going to pick that direction and move forward. I don't think that's how they feel. So I'm trying to relay a little bit of the sense I'm getting from the Jazz on that sense. But yeah, I mean, Cam Boozer is the most winningest player in this group. He's, the best player today in this group. He's got the best body right now in this group. Some of these guys, you got to come in. I mean, people got to recognize, AJ's going to take a couple of years for his body to fill out. He's got a great body, but he is, closer to Ace Bailey than he is Paul George today. It's going to take a few years for him to kind of realize his physical tools. Same goes for Darren Peterson. He's not going to have to put on as much weight because he's not as tall, but he's going to have to get a lot stronger. He's going to have to figure out why physically he wasn't able to withstand a college basketball season, which is about a third as difficult as an NBA season. So you've got to figure that out. Cam Boozer steps in and doesn't have to worry about that. You might thin him out. You might try and, get his bend a little bit better in his waist so his athleticism, breaks through a little bit more. But he comes into the league and he's working on his game almost exclusively. He doesn't have to work on his body the way a lot of these other guys have to put on weight before you really start building out their game. And it's not quite a Cody Williams situation, but it's similar. Cody Williams is certainly the extreme on one end of having to work on his body before you figure out his game. But that has to happen with those other players, and it really doesn't have to happen with Cam Boozer. And that's a real advantage for some guys.
What do you make of the explanation with Peterson, and have you dug much deeper? Obviously, for those that don't know, kind of did too much creatine early in the season and caused cramping, and that cramping, caused him to miss a lot of time and sit out. Certainly a red flag, but Ben, what have you make of that stuff?
It seems a little convenient to me that they were like, oh, well, obviously it was the creatine.
Yeah.
You didn't know that before? Like, you've never done this before?
I mean, I take it every day, and I've never cramped.
Yeah, and honestly, like I talked to a guy yesterday who's like a cyclist, and he's like, oh, that's not how creatine works. That doesn't make any sense. And he didn't know anything about the situation, but like, it's just a little convenient to like, oh, I know exactly what it was right after the draft, and I didn't think about it at all. And all these, super high-paid doctors that Kansas has had no idea. It's like, what? That doesn't make any sense to anybody. So I don't know what that was. And the Jazz will get their medicals done. In fact, the NBA has put a real emphasis on making sure that everybody in the top 10 has the emphasis or has the rules and all the medicals on all the players who are projected to be in those spots. So, like, this shouldn't be a mystery to, whoever's thinking about picking him. And if it is, it's because it's a real problem. It's like a real big issue. So in the sense that I don't worry about it because they will get to the bottom of it. But if they can't get to a bottom of it, like, it's a big enough reason to slide down the draft. So guys who aren't healthy, we remember Cam Whitmore, who a couple of years ago went into the draft and was like, well, he's the number 4 overall pick. There's just no way he's going to fall. And he fell to 20. It's like, well, yeah, he's a guard who's really heavily, reliant on his athleticism and has some great tools. But there's questions about his effort and there's questions about his medicals. And he slips 15 spots, 16 spots, So I wouldn't rule it out as being a problem going forward for him. So teams will have to do their due diligence. And yeah, I'm not totally sure I buy the creatine thing, but I'm also willing to give kids the benefit of the doubt and let him prove himself and recognize that college doesn't mean that much to a lot of these players. And he's got to prove it now at the next level.
So what would concern you the most if you were evaluating him? That, yes, the creatine thing or whatever, there's the cramping issues were real, and that's a concern for his health long term, or that he just didn't really want to play college ball. He wasn't interested, wasn't a win first guy, just wanted to bide his time to get to the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, it might just be, honestly, bigger picture stuff. If I had to pick between those two, certainly the medicals are a bigger question. I don't worry about that much about guys who don't want to be in college. I get it. I've seen guys who don't want to be in college. It's truly just a roadblock for them to get to their next level. It's a bit of a joke right now anyways. Like, none of these kids are going for school, and that's fine. The colleges don't care that they're not going for school. That's why they're giving these guys $4 and $5 million a year now. So you're going to give a kid that much money and then want him to try hard in class or think that, like, this is important to him. I really do not blame a 19-year-old for feeling that way. So the medicals then become a much bigger issue. But, bigger picture, it's that, what if he's 6'4" in a league that doesn't really have a lot of two guards that are 6'4", and his numbers look good at like kind of the square averages, but you dig through his games a little bit and there's some real question marks of like, why is there so many 1 assist games? Why are there so many 5 of 17 shooting games? Why are there games when he has 2 rebounds? That's kind of maybe my bigger question. Or why are there so many games where he plays 24 minutes and so few when he plays 33? I think those are all real questions.
Ben, you do such a great job covering the team. You grew up in this market. Where were you yesterday when this news hit, and how did you accept this news?
He was on the air, man.
You were on air when it happened.
Yeah, I was talking to you like right after.
Well, I know you were. I knew I'd talk to you later, but I didn't realize you were on right then.
How fun was that, though?
Lock that away.
That had to be cool.
Lock that away for stupid question of the day from Coach.
No, it was to watch it happen live because, again, we've done these shows several times. I've done them over the last 4 years, and to just think that, like, this is inevitably going to be the 7th pick or the 9th pick or the 8th pick, and then you kind of see the worst-case scenarios happening where it's like, oh, no, how did Dallas jump up? How did some of these teams jump up? And you're just looking through those first 5 picks, and you're just thinking, like, it would just really hurt the West if Golden State jumps up. It would really hurt the West if Oklahoma City jumps up. So those are those are kind of the things I think you were watching for earlier. A little, if you're a fan of basketball, wondering like, oh, that kind of makes the league less interesting. It's just like the good teams continue to get good players. So I think once they got past those first 5 or 6 picks, I think it started to get a lot more interesting for me.
As bad as things were last year, the Jazz still were able to draft Ace Bailey. If you're the Pacers, not only do you not get into the top 3, you lose your pick altogether. Just how damaging. I mean, when your GM essentially has to apologize to your fan base, things aren't going well.
Yeah, I think that might have been a little bit of an overreaction on their part. Now, look, what they did was like a great swing. I actually love the swing that they took, because had this worked out, they end up with one of, A.J. DiBonsa, Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, or Caleb Wilson, and Ivica Zubac, and you get Tyrese Halliburton back next year. It's like, wow, that's an insane swing. And all of a sudden you're the most competent team in the East, and you were 3/4 away from being able to beat the Oklahoma City Thunder to win the finals. Like, I do think those are the risks you actually have to be willing to take. The nice thing is now, like, the downside is they still have an unprotected 2031 first-round pick. So while that pick alone is not going to get you a player of the caliber of, the Boozers, the DiBonsas, the Petersons out there, it's still a really valuable piece. And you have a guy in Ivica Zubac who's one of the 5 or 6 best centers in the NBA on an absolute steal of a contract, like on a top 10 contract in the NBA. And you look at so often, how do teams win titles? It's like, well, they have a guy on his rookie deal who's jumped up and is performing like a veteran, making, a third of what he should, or a veteran who's on a steal of a deal. This was certainly Steph Curry's issue early in his career, where he signed his deal off of his bad ankle injuries and wasn't getting paid the full max. And you think, well, how did they build out this full roster around him? It's like, well, they had all this extra flexibility, and Zubac will provide some of that. So they're going to be still a very serious contender next year, but having a top 4 pick would have changed their outlook significantly more.
Would you be willing to facilitate something with Anthony Davis in hopes of securing the number 1 pick if you were the Jazz?
I hadn't really heard of the Anthony Davis thing. I've seen a lot of people say, like, would you do Ace Bailey and 2 for 1? I'm like, there's a chance Ace Bailey's better than these players. Like, I'm not – we're not far enough down the road with Ace, and there's not so many answers with, Darren Peterson or A.J. DiBonsa that, like, there's no world where Ace Bailey is better than A.J. DiBonsa. Like, that's in the cards. It's not what I would bet on, but it's not insane. So, no, I wouldn't do that deal. Anthony Davis, you're probably looking at, like, Walker at a similar number to Anthony Davis, which Anthony Davis' numbers could be way higher because he's on his true supermax. But, yeah, you're probably looking at, like, a $35 million Walker, $10 million, combination of Kyle Filipowski and Cody Williams to get Anthony Davis back, and then you move up to get number 1. That's more interesting to me than Ace Bailey and 2 for number 1 flat out. I do think that's probably a more interesting deal, and then you hope that Anthony Davis has accepted that he has to play the 5, or he and Jaren Jackson Jr. kind of play 4 or 5. Problem is he's just so old and he just plays so rarely. Like, there's a reason Dallas gave him away even after they traded everything to get him. They just kind of gave him away at the deadline. So ultimately, like, again, I don't think anyone is going to be sitting at number 2 and be like, wow, this is the drop off from LeBron to the rest of that class. That's not how AJ is being viewed. In fact, I had one person who's very well connected in the NBA say, this is actually not a generational draft. This is not LeBron. This is not Victor Wembanyama. I don't think people are viewing number 1 that well. And I think the gap between DiBonsa, Peterson, and Boozer is so much more slim than people are giving it credit.
Well, Ben, we appreciate it. I know you got more insight coming up today at 2 o'clock, but thanks for hanging out with us, man.
Yeah, my pleasure.
There he is, Ben Anderson, NBA Jazz Insider, KSLSports.com, and new afternoon host every day from 2 to 6 with Jake Scott.
That was my first. I was like, hey, Buzz Aldrin, where were you in the moonland?
Oh, no.
I was on the moon. Where were you?
Here's the thing. Like, I think
what a dumb question I just asked. Let's just be honest. We got to be accountable.
I think we know what happened. Over the last 2 years, Ben Anderson and I were on the air together during the lottery when the Jazz failed miserably to move up in the draft. Yesterday, Ben goes on. I was not invited to be a part of that broadcast, and the Jazz move up to number 2. So I think ultimately, Jazz fans, you should thank me and my laziness for not wanting to be on the air on a Sunday afternoon on Mother's Day for the reason why the Jazz are now picking number 2.
What do you mean laziness? It's not like you said no. What are you talking about?
Well, I did come on eventually.
Yeah,
but,
of course. We had you on.
Actually, what it was is that Lloyd just didn't invite me.
Exactly.
He didn't want me to
No,
play.
I had heard. I'm going to defend my Raider guy here. I had heard that that the day was so important and the talent was so, big in Scotty that he just I got to take this day.
Hey, Scotty has been doing a lot of stuff for the station. I'm talking mammoth post game stuff.
I know. I'm trying to
I
stand up for you for once, and then you turn on me.
I'm not
by
turning.
the way,
there's no turning.
Okay.
By the way, I've had more fun doing those mammoth post games than anything I've done in a while.
And I love those. And Jay,
that was so much fun with Jay.
The minute the game ended, I got to see what these dudes talk about.
Yeah. And, Jay's coaching me up, man. I feel like I'm a hockey guy now. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Mom, can you tell me a story?
Sure. Once upon a time, a mom needed a new car.
Was she brave?
She was tired, mostly. But she went to Carvana.com and found a great car at a great price. No secret treasure map required.
Did you have to fight a dragon?
Nope. She bought it 100% online. From her bed, actually.
Was it scary?
Honey, it was as unscary as car buying could be.
Did the car have a sunroof?
It did, actually.
Okay, good story.
Car buying you'll want to tell stories about. Buy your car today on
Carvana.
Delivery fees may apply.
The Jazz, the Mammoth, and the Utes, Cougars, and Aggies. When it comes to sports in Utah, we've got you covered. This is Scotty G and the coach, Tim LeCaux, presented by Mountain Land Supply on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Ari Temkin from Big 12 Radio. Get his thoughts on A.J. DeBonsa or Darren Peterson. By the way, it is an option. It's an opportunity for you to celebrate the PGA Championship and have a rooting interest in one particular golfer. Caller number 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE. That's 801-575-ZONE. If you're caller 12, Lloyd will assign you a golfer. And if your golfer ends up winning the PGA Championship, you will receive a Copper Rock logo golf bag and a $100 gas gift card. All brought to you by Copper Rock, where the pros play. And coming up starting tomorrow, we'll talk to Brian Taylor, Bob Casper, and get their thoughts on the PGA Championship coming up later on this week.
Who do you hope to draw? Who do you hope to draw?
I'll always be a Scotty Scheffler guy.
Chef?
Yeah.
How does this deal with how does this work? What day do we do that?
The pain in the butt?
Pain in the butt.
We will do that tomorrow.
The major pain.
The major pain in the butt. Oh, yeah, that's right. We do it on Wednesday. For some reason, I thought
Wednesday's the practice round, baby.
Yeah.
I already got I got my guy in my sights.
So here's the thing. Lloyd will do everything he can to throw you off your game. So he'll like say, he'll say like in the office, who I think is going to be really good this week. And he'll give you a name, and he's going to hope to like sway you to make sure that his golfer's available.
I hear he's a real dark horse.
I would take anything Lloyd says with a grain of salt.
Listen, I definitely listen when it comes to anything broadcasting. But when we're predicting, I ain't taking advice from one Lloyd Cole.
I would advise.
I've listened for long enough. I know who wins these things.
Yeah. All right, Ari Temkin's going to join us coming up here in a moment from Big 12 Radio, part of TuneIn and the Big 12 studios. So he saw a lot of A.J. DeBonsa. He saw a lot of Darren Peterson. And the question is, nobody doubts Darren Peterson's skill. I mean, it's just through the roof. You mentioned watching his high school film and what he did before he got to Kansas. But then Kansas happened, and he went through Bill Self's Hell Week. And at that point, it was just like, whether the creatine thing and he started cramping up, I don't know what the issues were, but it just never seemed like it gelled for him. Now, when he was out on the court, he looked phenomenal at times. But then he'd missed the second half, or there was a lot of things going on. It's tough to really figure out the truth behind what happened there.
Yeah, and that's where all the time and money will be spent when people are dealing with Peterson. They've got to get people they trust, because you asked me the question, were you truthful? And always tried to be, but I guarantee there are people in his camp, if things are awry, that aren't necessarily going to tell the exact truth because, they want him to get as much money as possible. So this is going to be one of the more intriguing cases. I look through history. You mentioned Greg Oden. He had a major foot concern. Joel Embiid was a bit of a mystery prior to his draft. And so it can be done. You just got to get to the bottom of it, and you got to be talking to the right people.
Yeah, Embiid missed his whole first year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's history there of dealing with things that could linger from the collegiate ranks. So you're like, yeesh, I don't know. I don't know if that's something we need to buy into, because AJ seems like a potential superstar, and he seems like the safer of the two picks. Now, when you look at upside, where the ceiling is, it might be a little bit more for Darren Peterson.
Yeah, and it all just depends on how big that ticker is. That is the one thing you can't – at the Combine, I wish they could hook you up some way, like to a machine that said, all right, this person wants to win this bad.
Yeah.
It's just like you write their win bad meter on the sheet, but there's not. So you have to read the tea leaves. You have to see how they approach their workouts.
How would you judge that when you were looking at recruiting? Now, high school versus college is different, but when you're looking at I got to imagine it's probably harder at the high school level to really judge, okay, when this guy gets into the culture, he's going to do this, or he's going to act like this, or he's going to play through pain and put the team first. Is that hard to identify?
Yeah, the differentiator was actually the stuff that doesn't happen while the clock's moving. It's in the margins. It's how are they interacting with their teammates after a turnover? What's their demeanor like on the bench in a tough situation? Coaches got to stand them up. How they're going to handle that? So those things are so telling, because they obviously start to speak to character. And so that's the big piece here. You know what these guys can do on the floor and what they can't do, for that matter. But I will say, after talking to Ben, that Danny Ainge has always been a guy who, when he drafts, and particularly high, it's elite. It's an elite thing. He's looking for elite skill. And so he's never been a guy to just take the safe pick.
Yeah.
And so I imagine, again, no stone unturned, and everything will be in play.
Coming up next, we'll chat with Ari Temkin, Big 12 Radio, straight ahead. This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
I sold my car in Carvana last night.
Well, that's cool.
No, you don't understand. It went perfectly. Real offer, down to the penny. They're picking it up tomorrow. Nothing went wrong.
So what's the problem?
That is the problem. Nothing in my life goes as smoothly. I'm waiting for the catch.
Maybe there's no catch.
That's exactly what a catch would want me to think.
Wow, you need to relax.
I need to knock on wood. Do we have wood? Is this table wood?
I think it's laminate.
Okay, yeah, that's good. That's close enough.
Car selling without a catch. Sell your car today on
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.
Radio in Utah is right here. This is Scotty G and the coach, Tim LaComb, on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Hey, guess what? Beehive Mills has a new production facility in Ogden. We are going to be there live. It's going to be a lot of fun coming up on May 14th, so make sure to join us and hang out with the crew up in Ogden, up in O-Town at Beehive Mills.
Do you know I'm already a satisfied client? In fact, my wife told me this weekend, I said, the spaghetti is so good.
Yeah?
And she's like,
well, guess
Beehive
what?
Mills.
Beehive Mills. Just throw it in the crock pot. You're good to go.
It's actually Beehive Meals. Sorry. I said Mills.
I thought you were, yeah.
No. I corrected myself.
You're taking a shot, Scotty.
They also now have the new, I know, that's what I thought, too.
Well, it was an Idaho shot, just a veiled one, because we got Idaho guys in the room.
You do feel a little threatened with a little bit of an Idaho flavor.
We've got Emmett and Declo represented here.
Yep.
And, yeah, it's a little, I can see. Potatoes have to do a lot to survive, and Idaho people are tough like that.
All we got to do is throw Jerome in, and we have like the perfect meth triangle right there. It's awesome.
Get a guy, and we can get a route. Not for that, but like we could do Pez dispensers.
We're gonna do what? Breaking Bad this thing?
Pez
a little
dispensers.
Winnebago.
You've got Emmett down.
Got Declo.
Do I got to come into Emmett and take over?
Oh,
Clay?
man. Ari Tempkin's going to be here in just a moment from Big 12 Radio, part of Tune In and the Big 12 studios. Looking forward to chatting with him, getting his thoughts on what he sees between A.J. DeBonsa as well as Darren Peterson, as the Jazz very likely could have one of those two guys, depending on who goes number one to Washington, or if the Jazz decide to move up a little bit and try to snag that, we shall see. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out for sure. Can't wait. It's going to be great going right up until draft day. I imagine there's going to be a lot of intrigue. You don't see Danny Ainge and a pick this high without seeing some fireworks in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, no, and that's exactly, we said it a few times, but that's what he wants. He wants people to wonder what he's going to do. Is he going to trade up? Is he going to trade down? Does he have his eye on somebody that he's actually going to swindle me out of a first-round pick and get the player he wants? I mean, because he's done all of that, and so that's why, you know, I've got popcorn ready. It's the buttered variety.
Nice.
And as much as I love the on-the-court stuff, this is the NBA to me right here.
Yep.
What happened yesterday, and now diving into all these guys and trying to find the true hidden gems, you know, the diamonds in the roughs. Because sometimes you look at the draft and you think at that time, man, these are the best players, and you go back and like, no, that was a rough patch right there.
Yeah.
So in some cases, and this is a very deep draft with a lot of talent. I'm excited about that. I did do a little research while we're waiting for Ari, and found out through my connections at a school down south.
Yes.
The Brigham Young, that the Wizards came to see BYU 5 times in Provo this year. And of those 5 times, the GM never made the trip.
Really?
So at least the GM didn't see him in Utah. Now, it could have gone somewhere else. This is just in Utah. But 9 other teams, the Jazz came the most of anybody to see AJ. 9 other teams came more than the Wizards to see AJ play.
Really? And it's not like the Wizards shocked the world by moving up to number 1. They were in the
was in play for them.
They had the worst record. Yeah.
So I'm just looking for signs. That's all I'm doing with the resources that we have available to us.
Can't wait.
Follow the tickets. They say follow money. Follow money.
Follow the money for sure. And if you're Washington, this is going to be an interesting decision because I would like to see what the numbers are for them and Darren Peterson. You know, are they right there? Have they been watching him the whole time? Have they been on that scent for a lot more than they have AJ?
Unfortunately, I don't have the type of connections at Kansas
I know.
that I have here. But no, that would be fascinating. And Ben made a great point. Depending on the board, there's a board that in a world that exists that the board has Boozer 1, perhaps, Devonta 1, and also Peterson 1. So this is the fun part is we're going to sort through all that, and everybody's going to start throwing out smoke signals. But we will try to discern what's what.
Well, earlier today, somebody close to the Wizards, some of their beat writers said, the Wizards will entertain any thoughts of moving down in the draft. They're not necessarily in love with this number 1 overall pick. It's like, okay, all right, we know what's going on
here. What do we
got
to do?
It's all posturing. Everybody's going to throw out all kinds of smoke signals. They're going to try to do whatever they can to try to boost their value. And if nothing else, tell the Jazz, like, hey, how bad do you want your Utah guy? You want him? Well, guess what? We're going to talk to a lot of people, not just you. You know, somebody wants to move up, well, we're going to talk to him. So if you really want this number 1 pick, you better jump in right now, and you better do it. And you better come with a strong offer because we're going to shop it around.
Well, that's just good business.
It is.
That is very good business. You got to understand the marketplace, understand the value of what you got. And, you know, that is, to me, that's the secret sauce.
Well, and honestly, too, there's a lot of bluffing that goes on.
No, so much. Like we talked about Ace Bailey earlier in the show, but for every Ace Bailey, there's another name. Ace basically was castigated as a guy who all he wanted to do was shoot, didn't really have a great understanding of the game. Could he fit at his age in a locker room with a bunch of old guys? And the answer to all that is certainly yes. We found that out, but there was a ton of fog around him. And when it came to me, I just had to dig into his tape. And when I started watching his tape, I saw way better decisions than were being talked about. Now, you could look at some egregious highlights or lowlights, but shot clock sometimes, having the ball in your hands late in a shot clock on a team, you're going to have to take horrible shots. I remember Elijah Bryant, in fact, he was such a great player for us and actually just made first team All-Euro over in Europe and is still playing at a very high level over there. But Elijah Bryant got so got stuck with the balls and had so much at Elon that his percentages weren't great. And so a lot of people passed on him. They didn't look past, just the bad stuff.
Well, I mean, look, you had Dylan Harper, who's turned out to be a stud in this league. You watched him with the Spurs, and you have Ace Bailey, and that team not only did not make the NCAA tournament, they weren't above 500 at Rutgers.
Right. No, exactly.
So obviously there was some other things going on there because that team should have just went scorched earth on college basketball.
Your starting lineup, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey from Declo, Idaho, Scott Gerard from Highland, Utah, Timmy Lacombe, and, of course, from Murray, Utah, one Lloyd Cole. That's what the starting lineup was like. And those two guys and 3 schlubs.
But honestly, even that should have won more games than they did.
Yeah, you would think.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hey, sweetie, your mother showed me this Carvana thing for selling the car. I'm going to give it a try. Wish me luck. Me again. I put in the license plate. It gave me an offer. Unbelievable. Okay, I accepted the offer. They're picking it up Tuesday from the driveway. I haven't even left my chair. It's done. The car is gone. I'm holding a check. Anyway, Carvana, give it a whirl. Love ya.
So good, you'll want to leave a voicemail about it. Sell your car today on
Carvana.
Pickup fees may apply.